These are all streamed live to YouTube. So anyone can watch. They can't participate, obviously, from YouTube, but you can watch live from YouTube if someone wanted to just watch and not provide any testimony. Okay, the last thing I need to do is run through our hearing script. This basically just covers the procedure for the hearing, then we'll jump right into the presentation of the applicant's case. So this is the March 9th, 2022 session of the Zoning Hearing Examiner docket. My name is David Sturkey. I'm the Zoning Hearing Examiner for the City of Cincinnati, and I'll preside over this hearing. The case before us today is case number ZH20220012. The purpose of this hearing is to allow applicants and opposing parties to testify and to offer and refute evidence and testimony. This hearing will follow the rules found in the zoning code and the supplemental rules of the Zoning Hearing Examiner. All testimony and evidence that an applicant or any opposing party wishes to offer must be presented at this hearing, unless a party has submitted testimony or evidence in the form of writing prior to this hearing. The hearing will proceed as follows. The applicant, the applicant's attorney, or the applicant's agent will first present the applicant's case. The public will then have an opportunity to speak after the applicant has presented its case. If the applicant is represented by an attorney, the applicant's attorney may cross-examine any person who has testified at this hearing. If a party of record is represented by an attorney, the attorney for the party of record may present witnesses after the applicant has presented its case and may cross-examine any person who has testified at the hearing. In the event that any party testifies or offers argument in opposition to an application, the applicant shall have an opportunity to rebut the testimony and or argument offered in opposition. After the applicant has been given an opportunity to rebut any testimony and or argument offered in opposition, and the attorney for a party of record will have an opportunity to make a closing statement. Finally, the applicant will have an opportunity to make a closing statement. After all presentations have been made, I will close the hearing. Decisions may be expected within 2 weeks. So for our purposes here today, just to do a quick recap on that, I'm going to give the owner and the applicant an opportunity to tell me about this application, why they're asking for it, background on the project, anything they think would be important for me or for the rest of the public that's here to know about this application before I make a decision on it. I'll then move to the public, which I believe is everybody else. We'll have an opportunity to tell me or to provide any input that they would like about this application after the applicant has been given a chance to speak. I will give the zoning plans examiner, Doug Owen, an opportunity to provide any testimony that he thinks is pertinent or relevant to my decision. And then we will then go back to the applicant and owner to respond to any of the comments or questions provided from the zoning plans examiner or from the public. And then finally, the owner and the applicant will have an opportunity to make any closing statements. So because no one here is represented by an attorney from the public or any other neighbors or property owners are represented by an attorney, you will only have one opportunity here to tell me what your opinion is or provide testimony about this case. So I'd like to just remind folks of that. It's just one bite at the apple. We're not going to keep going back and forth forever. It'll just be one opportunity. So, okay. I may limit or exclude any testimony that I deem irrelevant or outside the scope of the application being considered. I may interrupt any speaker to ask questions or to make any comments. I may also refuse to consider hearsay testimony or documents. This generally means evidence you want to introduce that consists of statements made by someone who's not present at the hearing today. In the event of any technical difficulties with the video conferencing technology, I'll do my best to troubleshoot those on the fly, but to the extent there's some defect that prevents us from meaningfully going forward with the hearing, I may continue or postpone the hearing, and that'll be at my discretion. Okay. Final thing I need to do before we get started is to swear in all of our witnesses. So if you intend on providing any testimony here today, making any comments, asking any questions, doing anything other than just strictly observing, then you need to be sworn in. So if that is you, if you could take yourself off mute, I need everyone to answer out loud and to raise their right hand. Do you solemnly swear the testimony you shall give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
I do.
I do.
And did I have Mr. Back and Mr. Walker sworn?
I do. I do. I do.
Great. Fantastic. All right. So I think we're ready to go ahead and get started. Who's going to be taking the lead on the presentation here? Will it be Mr. Back or will it be Mr. Walker?
Well, David, both of us, well, I'll start out and then Herb can join in. I'll start out just briefly with an architectural description of what we're asking for today.
Okay, sounds good. Hey, do me a favor, guys. It's easier for me to track you if one of you talks into the camera at one time. So Mr. Back, I can see sort of the top of your head right now. There we go. Perfect. And if you could just point that back and forth as you talk, that'd be great. Mr. Back, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. David, what we're asking for today, and Doug, correct me if I'm wrong anything, we're asking for there's some existing fences that are built over there, and we're asking for variances for two things. One variance is the pool fence, which is a 6-foot high wood fence around the swimming pool, which replaced an existing fence, the same height, same location, with a new fence around the pool. So we're just asking, that's the one variance, is asking for the new pool fence, which is in the same location, same height, 6-foot high wood privacy fence at the pool. That's the one variance because that's the William Howard Taft considered the front yard. So that pool fence is in the front yard. So that's the one variance. We're asking for since it's in the front yard, we're asking for a 2-foot height variance, and we're asking for it's less than 50% open. So that's the one variance we're asking for is on the pool fence. The other variance we're asking for is up by it's the side of the house, even though it's its front entrance facing Taft Lane. There's 2 brick walls. One's on the left corner of the house. It's a brick wall that's higher than 6 foot. And then there's a little brick wall that comes out at the right corner of his house. And that's higher than 6 foot. We're asking for a variance, a height variance on those fences. That's all this variance is for. And specifically on my drawings I submitted, I specifically excluded, if you look at my site plan, I specifically excluded that fence that's out in the right of way, the fence, and I got a note, fence outside of property line, not part of this zoning or permit approval. I specifically deleted that from any of this stuff because I knew there was further discussions and that had to be looked at closer. We're not asking for anything on that fence, for any kind of approval or anything on that fence as part of this. I met with some of the neighbors over there Friday at the site and explained.
Would you mind if I shared my screen? You referenced the site plan. And I'm going to, can everyone see that? Anyone?
Yes, looks good.
Thank you. Okay. You referenced several fences, Mr. Beck. So the yellow fence, this is your first request right here.
That's correct.
For 2 feet in height, for 6 feet high front yard fencing. Is that right?
That's correct. And also, since it's in a front yard, it should be 50% open, and it's a privacy fence. So we're asking for 2 variances on that fence. And that new wood fence is the exact same location and the same height as the existing wood fence that it replaced.
Got, and you're talking about this fence still, right?
Yes.
So there was a 6 foot high fence here prior to the start of this installation. Is that right?
Yes, Herb, is that correct?
That's right.
Okay. And how long ago did the old fencing come down?
Maybe about 6 months ago.
Okay. Gotcha. And is it otherwise any different? Is the new fencing otherwise any different than the previous fencing was?
No, it's in the same area as the previous fence. Nothing's different about it other than it's newer number.
Okay. Got it. And I'm sorry, Mr. Beck, you had talked about fencing along a right of way. I assume you're talking about this blue fencing here along William Howard Taft. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct. It's my understanding and I met with the neighbors on Friday. That's my understanding that they have safety concerns about that fence out there.
But this is 4 feet and lower than 50% opacity as well, right?
Yes, that fence out there meets zoning code.
So it's permitted by right.
But I excluded, it's not on our property yet, and we don't have permission from the city yet to build it. So I excluded it from these. I had to show it on my drawings because it's there. It's on the survey as an existing condition. So I just couldn't leave it off my plans. I mean, I guess I could have, but I thought it was more proper to show the existing conditions, but then to note it's not part of this. We're not asking for anything on that fence right now. Make clear it wasn't part of this approval.
Sure, okay. So what's the second request?
Second request are those two little red, look up by the house on the right and left corners of the house, front of the house facing Taft Road Lane. There's two small brick walls, and those need height variances. I think the one, I don't have exactly in the staff report, I believe one needs it.
Okay. And these are both new?
Yes.
Got it. Okay. So would the brick walls be in this picture here? Or this is from Taft Road, right? Mr. Walker, or do you know?
Yes, it is. And if you look to the right, on the right-hand side, I believe there's a column right there, and the picture doesn't show the exact or the whole. It doesn't look like the whole wall, but on the right-hand side would be one of those walls, and then on the left-hand side that's obscured by the trees, you would see the other one.
Okay. All right.
On the left-hand side of the house.
Yeah, they're
Okay.
back at the corners of the house.
Okay, thanks. Mr. Beck, anything else about the project? Why this is appropriate?
I think what we're asking for these variances, I think it's in line with other fences that it's not out of line with other fences that have been built in the immediate area right there. The next house going up William Howard Taft probably has a 8-foot solid privacy fence right at the property lines. The house across the street's has 6-foot high solid fences right on the property lines. The house across the street has a 5-foot high picket fence. So there's houses adjacent to them on 3 sides that have fences that wouldn't meet the current zoning codes. So I think this is not out of line that other stuff that has been built, and this stuff we're asking for isn't close to right of ways or isn't close to the property lines. Doesn't affect anybody's views. Improves the appearance of this house. It gives them some privacy.
Okay. All right, Mr. Walker, anything you wanted to add?
Yes, just in regards to what he just said about the improve the appearance and privacy, but it's also meant to replace the gate. Both of these structures are designed to hold the gate to allow you to get to the area where you're coming into. The gate originally for the pool area was at the lower end of the steps where it was right up against the step. All of it was either needed some serious repair or a change. And the landscaper suggested bringing it at the top of the steps so that you could actually have a clearance when you open the gate as opposed to at the lower end of the steps. That's how that gate on the right-hand side came about, and the structure that's built to the house was designed to meet that goal, hold a large 6-foot gate that would allow you to get in to the pool area and go down the steps and reach that area. On the left-hand side, there was originally a awning with 4 or 5 steel rods that were holding it up in that area where there's a patio. So there was originally a patio, the awning was over it. And in this picture, if you look to the far end of the house, the back end in this picture would be the far left-hand side.
This picture doesn't show.
Oh, no, this is an older picture.
Yeah, this is from July 2011, but I'm just trying to get a sense of the orientation here. So this is obviously the old fence.
Yes.
Right there, that's where one of the fences is, right there.
Okay.
That,
And you said that's to install a gate that you can go right into the pool area here?
Right.
Okay.
On the left-hand side, it does the same thing, only the awning that was over that area has now been removed. The steel rods have been removed, and that wall was placed and put up to add privacy for you can enter that area, that space with a gate now. So it's a private patio area in which
This area here?
Yes, yes.
Got it. Okay. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I just wanted to provide some context as you were describing the property. Okay, anything else, Mr. Walker, you'd like to tell me?
Initially, when this project got started, the landscaper researched it, I assume.
Looks like we're on a little bit of a glitch on Mr. Walker's. Mr. Walker?
To see what
Doug,
you can do with
Doug,
the
is that all around or is that just me? Hello?
Yeah, I cannot hear him either. I think he froze up.
Okay, Mr. Beck, Mr. Walker, your screen just froze. I missed everything.
Can you see me or hear me now?
Yes, can see and hear you just fine.
Oh, okay.
Just the last few sentences you said there, if you could repeat them, we didn't catch it.
Actually, I was just describing, I'm trying to think where I was at in that. I was describing what the landscaper came up with in terms of the pool area and the fencing. Essentially, when he researched it to put these fencing areas together, he was unaware of the zoning for the front yard, and he assumed that this was a backyard or a side yard. So the initial project was planned for a backyard. This property has no backyard. It only has the two front yards, and initially it only has just the space where the pool is that is essentially for any sort of outside recreational space that's enclosed for safety. So what he did was come up with a plan. Once he was told about the zoning rules and regulations, that's when the various changes were made to fit the code for 2 front yards. And that's where we are with it now. And that's why these plans have been presented to show that the areas that are in question are to meet, what was existing, but also to kind of meet what's expected for 2 front yards. With regards to the repairs of that fence, it was replaced, but he was unaware that, in the front yard, you can't just remove the fencing. You have to only repair that fencing. But while in the middle of that removal, that's when that was, discovered. And so that's why the project was initially started without that, because it was understood then, prior to him finding out, that you can't replace the fencing. You can only repair certain planks. The entire fence needed to be replaced. So we just went ahead and finished the project like it was. He couldn't put up the old fence, or he couldn't put it back up. So that's why we're asking for this variance now.
Okay. All right, great. Thank you for your testimony, Mr. Back. Anything further before we move on to public comment?
If we hear public comment, are we allowed to answer any questions or that they might bring up, or address any issues they might bring up?
Absolutely. You'll have a chance to respond to any of the comments from the public or comments from the zoning plans examiner, Doug Owen.
Thank you.
Sure. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sure. All right. And again, I'm just going to sort of go off the orientation on the screen, check people in here. So Mr. Hankey, anything you'd like to tell me?
I'm sorry?
Is there any testimony you'd like to provide in this hearing?
Not at this point, no.
Okay, great. Let's see, Max Kobe.
I sent you my thing in writing. I'm opposed. I'm not against it, but I think that we need to address the overall issue of the whole fencing complex and not piecemeal it. Also, there's a history of disregard for city regulations and procedures. We have documentation saying he was notified multiple times, from my understanding, that of his violations. Currently, the fencing on William Howard Taft, which this is not a variance subject to this, but it's an overall part of the fencing complex, causes hinders visibility and could cause a serious automobile accident.
Okay. And so just to be clear, Mr. Kobe, it sounds like the sort of the procedure or the process of making some of these changes on the property, you believe fell outside of what is permitted by the city of Cincinnati, but you're not necessarily opposed to the requests that they're making for relief today in regards to.
Yes, what I'm trying to do is I'm saying that this is being piecemealed, that there should be a decision on the whole fencing complex, which includes the part that is on William Howard Taft, which is a safety hazard and is a nuisance. And I am actually scared to pull out of my driveway because I can't, it blocks oncoming traffic. And cars go very fast down William Howard Taft, and we have some young families on our street. That's what I'm asking is that overall is for us to address this as one fence issue instead of splitting it up.
Okay. All right. I think I understand. Anything else you wanted to share?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks for being here. Thank you for your testimony. Okay, Mr. Davis, Chris Davis, and Mr. Kobe, that I will enter your official statement that I received last night into the record, which I think restates what we've heard today. Did you guys catch that? I'm sorry. I think my internet connection might be unstable.
I got it.
Okay, great. Okay, Doug, if you wouldn't mind giving me a shout if my side freezes up at all, if you're having any trouble hearing me, I'd appreciate it.
Sure.
Thanks. All right, Mr. Davis.
Thank you. Max is right that this is part of a pattern of the construction with this property, and is kind of, I feel, deliberately concentrating on very small pieces of this property to try to get what would seem to be reasonable zoning variance requests. When at this point, there, from everything I can see, not a single permit request for nearly a year and a half of construction that's happened on this site. I find it really curious that while there's photos of what the property used to look like, and all of these plans were prepared, and report was prepared in January, there aren't any photos of what these enormous walls look like now, for them to share what the walls actually look like. I didn't realize I was supposed to submit everything in writing ahead of time. I do have some photos that we've taken in the past that, if I'm able to share a
Sure,
screen, I can show those.
Absolutely, yeah.
Let me, I think this is what I want. Is this correct here? Should be just the photos we're looking for. You know, the construction has occupied, are we seeing the actual footage of that?
Yeah. Mhm.
Is this showing now?
I'm seeing a picture of front walkway.
from-
Yeah, I can see your
Right,
cursor.
let me start
Yes.
here at the front edge. This is the wall. The only reason we're here is because multiple neighbors have made multiple reports to the building department trying to get some sort of responsible development to happen here. And at no point has that, like, nothing has happened, and it's become sort of an enormous frustration for everyone. I understand that building is completely without resources to really like take care of things where people are not operating in good faith. But this is the original wall before they put up the 100% covered walls in between that was 8 feet tall. It's hard. This doesn't really give the scale of it. Now it's 4 feet tall and was also 100% opaque before. We had to ask for a second work order, stop work, to happen on this construction. Here, as an to address the pool fence, I think there's some shots of the original fence here. But the original from Google Maps, you can take a look. The original fence around the pool was scalloped, had details on top. It's not the same fence. So for them to state that it's simply replacing the previous fence is just not true. That's not correct. I see that they don't have any photos of the previous version, and so they don't have something to compare. But if you take a look at, I can submit those later. I could go scrolling through the way too many tabs I have open on my counter to try to show them, but it's clear. So I object to that fence because it's not a direct replacement at all.
You believe it's
I would
have scalloped?
It's not scalloped. There isn't the same detail, and I would have to tell you whether or not it's the same height. I don't know if it's the same height, and it's of a piece that I object to every piece of this. First, because they are not in the zoning. I don't believe a variance is necessary or due, and it's also being done. All of these plans are the existing wall, the existing fence. It's only existing because they tore down everything that was there and put up all of this new construction without a single permit, without a single consultation. And the idea that mysteriously the landscaper putting up these multi-ton columns had just no idea that this was a front yard is laughable. That fence, I object to the pool fence being replaced with a fence that's not the same at all. First, for the 2 fence sections that are directly next to the house, this is what they didn't show you photos of. Mysteriously, they couldn't manage to actually include those when the reports were written in January, but this was all stuff we took last fall when we were incredibly frustrated with the work just continuing to go on month after month. This is an enormous wall beside and completely obscuring the front of the house on one side.
Mr. David, I'm not quite sure what I'm looking at there. What?
Yeah, sorry.
I'm
looking for the right photo. Let me start back here. There we go. Here's the front of the house on Taft Lane. This is the wall to the left side of the front door. It would be on the plans, it's the southeast corner. You can see there in front of the skid steer Bobcat, that large wall that they've built there in front of that patio space. It's 6+ feet tall. I mean, I'm sure that the measurements are correct, but they're deliberately not showing you photos of what it actually looks like, which is large and imposing and not in character with what things have been before. That's a better, more clear shot of that. The fence on the right side that they would like to tell you that they're putting in, which is here. Let me see if I've got there's a better shot. The reason why they've moved this large fence wall to the top of those stairs is because they built an entire balcony and roof with no permits, no plans, no nothing, off the side of this house over the pool. And they've added these stairs that they want inside this fence. That's why the fence has been moved to the top of the stairs. It is disingenuous to say that, oh, it just works better with the landscaping. It's been built this way so that this large load-bearing balcony with 0 permits, 0 inspections can be accommodated with that set of stairs inside the wall. Note that neighbors were really amused. This is the second version of the balcony. I don't know why they built an entire first one and then tore it down and built a second one, but all of this has happened with 0 oversight of any kind. It's really a problem. you can see this thing. So I object to both of these sets of walls on the front of the house, and I object to the pool wall. Here, actually, in this shot, you can see a section of the fence. You can see the top detail, and you can see the scalloped tops. So their replacement fence is not a direct replacement. This is not the same fence that they're putting back in at all. So that's not a correct statement that they're making here. The last major point that I have is, as Max said, the real problem that we all have. Essentially, all of the neighbors have been incredibly frustrated with this construction, but just sort of let it go because it's his house. They can build what they want in their own house, despite 0 permits, despite 0 inspections, despite that being like a potential safety hazard. The spot where we finally started following up and trying to get something stopped was this 8-foot wall that they put on city property at the corner of Taft and Taft Lane. It completely obscures traffic and makes it very, very dangerous.
Where's
so this
are you referring to the pillars?
Yes, this pillar, these were taken before they completed the concrete construction connecting the pillars and then the 6.5+ foot tall fencing in between them. After objections, after we followed up with the building department multiple times, they were given a stop work order to immediately cease and get permits and plans. They never halted. In fact, construction doubled in speed, and they actually went back and cut all of these columns down, and all of the fence they cut down to 4 feet at that point. It took a second visit by building departments with a second hand delivered by multiple inspectors order to stop work when exterior work stopped at that point. Construction has continued on the house. Construction continued at night. I know that much of this is outside of the purview of this hearing, but this is really sort of the only place where we can get any sort of someone to hear how ridiculous this entire process has been. It's been really ugly. And the last direct issue here is all of these plans, they want to be clear that, at the same time, they're not showing you any photos of what it looks like now. They also want to tell you that this fence out here on the street is on the DOTE right of way, so it doesn't matter for this zoning. They are in the process of attempting to purchase this property from the city now. Real estate is expecting to have the reports ready for that in 2 weeks on what the various departments have to say about that. So these, which they've been working on trying to do since we got the stop work order last fall. So the idea that they've got plans they've prepared for you, reports written in January saying, oh no, that doesn't matter. That's totally on city property. That's no big deal at all. And they aren't addressing the fact that ought to be included here, which is, yes, this is absolutely part of this project because they're trying to buy this property. Even at 4 feet, it is a dangerous corner with this fence. I quit counting accidents that I was home to be aware of around 20 or so over the decades I've lived here. And I didn't live here for 15 years. The number of accidents that happen along this section of Taft are incredible and horrific. Putting in another blind corner makes it worse. And that must be addressed in this zoning variance when nothing else seems to be stopping this. Every single bit of this has just kept nosing forward without any repercussions, without any kind of being forced to actually do it the right way. I also noticed that discussion was made of how across the street there's a, I think 6-foot fence was what Dennis said. That's not 6 feet tall. That's about 4.5, 5 feet. And it's also almost completely open. There are no enormous 1.5 2 foot wide columns down that fence. The fence behind it, here will this show up? I'm not sure. We can take a look at that as well. Are you seeing the map now?
Yep.
Great. I appreciate you taking the time to listen to this. I'm sorry I get worked up about it. It's incredibly frustrating. It's here's a good view from the corner. Here is Google Photos took a photo of this. I think this was in September. This was when the 8-foot sections were built, but not when it had been cut back down to 4 feet. Actually, this driveway is another good example. All of this concrete was poured. There's concrete in between all of these columns. None of this was permitted or inspected, and it's already falling apart. This concrete is already cracked. It's spalling. It has wear spots. And this is the same construction of this same wall, this 8-foot tall sections of wall, which you can't see once you're on Taft, up lane, up around the house, the same appalling construction quality on this wall that they've got up against the house. There's no inspections going on. Nothing is being taken care of. Here's this fence across the street, which is almost completely full visibility through it. There's no obstructions, nothing. The fence across Taft Lane, while it is taller, yes, it does not obscure traffic, the oncoming traffic that's coming up Taft. That oncoming traffic in the other direction is across the street. Also, their picket fence on Taft Lane is a standard, completely normal fence. And the picket fence that they claimed at 1880 is nowhere near, I think, the 5 or 6 feet that they mentioned. And that would only be if you're standing on the ground below it. This is a completely standard, really nice white picket fence. All of this is normal. This house replaced this fence several years ago when a tree took out half of it. So it was put back in at the exact same size. For a number of reasons, you can see here's the original house, what it looked like, and here's the construction going on. Well, that's not a good shot. Let's see. Maybe it'll do it a little better. Nope. Well, you could see that from the photos. My long diatribe here, are there any questions that I can answer or any? I just feel that this should not be dealt with as some sort of, oh, this tiny little 3-foot section of fence wall, no big deal. Oh, this fence that's replacing the previous fence, no big deal. No, none of these things are correct. This is all ridiculous. That section of fence at the top of those stairs is because of the crazy amount of construction they've done without any oversight whatsoever. So that's about it.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Davis. I don't have any questions for you right now.
Thank you.
But I appreciate your time, your time and thorough testimony. Thanks.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Okay, Ms. I don't think Ms. Taylor was sworn in. I assume she did not want to testify. Okay. John Kobe. Mr. Kobe? You'll need to unmute if you. So, Mr. there,
Are you able to hear me now, Mr. Hearing
Yep.
Officer?
we can, go ahead.
Thank you for your patience on dealing with computers. As you can see, I'm long in the tooth, and computers seem to be anti-me.
No problem. What would you like to tell us?
What I would like to tell you is that whereas I don't know Mr. Walker personally, except for having Mr. Beck meet with us in a very professional and advocate manner on behalf of his client, Mr. Walker's actions were offensive and hostile to the neighbors. You've heard that. His actions were in totally disregard to his neighbors' well-being, and he thumbed his nose at the city. The appropriate action should have been for him to apply to the city for a variance and build the wall, and at which time we could then appropriately have input into how the walls would look and what they're trying to protect and what they're willing to do. It would be my hope that that would be the case, that we would have a chance to take a look at the wall before it is in fact built. And we further, when I say disregard, whenever I come out of that driveway, this man, I nearly have been in an accident 2 or 3 times. And for that, a dangerous part, I thank Mr. Walker. With that, I will hold my peace.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Kobe. Appreciate your time and your testimony here today.
You're
welcome. Okay. Looks like Tom Murphy, are you still with us?
Yes, can you hear me?
I can. Are you here? Did you want to provide testimony? Can't hear you anymore. You just muted.
Yes, I would like to provide testimony.
What would you like to say?
I live across the street from number 1 Taft Road Lane, and the construction that occurred last year included the open sawing and unabated dispersal of silica dust into the air. Silica dust is a known carcinogen. None of the workers were wearing masks. This dust often came around and into my house. The fact that no permits were requested or given, and yet construction went ahead, shows a disregard that I think is worth noting. Additionally, the fact that a wall was built on city property and still exists there without any pushback is unconscionable. The danger of this intersection is tremendous with that wall there. Additionally, it should be noted that number 1 Taft Road Lane has a driveway on William Howard Taft, so the lane would not be used for egress. I provided yesterday a picture of what was constructed and a video of the workers sawing cinder block and brick. So at this point, without the city being involved in permitting or the owner asking for permits and having gotten them, I oppose any variation, any variance. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Murphy. All right. I'm going to give our zoning plans examiner, Doug Owen, an opportunity to provide any testimony that he would like in addition to his staff report.
I don't have a lot to add other than what is written in the staff report. As Mr. Back mentioned, this zoning review is only for the work on private property, as is the case for any zoning review. If the right of way is purchased in the future, we'll take a look at the new fence or the fence in that area. But this is just for that pool enclosure as well as those 2 sections of brick wall, which we do support the variances for, as the analysis in the staff report shows.
Thanks, Doug. All right, Mr. Back and Mr. Walker, now is your opportunity to respond to any of the testimony from neighboring property owners that you've heard today, and then provide any closing remarks.
Yes, as I mentioned earlier, I met with some of the neighbors I met over there Friday afternoon for about an hour. And I explained what we were asking for our variances for. And then they expressed, basically at that meeting, they expressed their concern about the fence and right of way, and the same things they said here, blocking the view. I wasn't aware of concerns about what we were actually asking for. Their concerns were about the fence and the right of way. And after that meeting, I got a hold of the owner. I had him meet me out there on the weekend, explain what their concerns were about the right of way, and Herb can follow up with my conversations in case I'm not saying anything correctly. He can follow up, but I expressed their concerns about the right of way, and Herb can follow up, but it's my understanding that he's agreeable to move that part of the fence out of the right of way. Even though this isn't part of what we're asking for today, I told him that based on my meeting, that was the major concern, was that fence out of the right of way. And it sounds like he's willing to take that fence out and put it on his property, move it back on his property. But I'll let her follow up on that.
Okay, thank you. So Mr. Starkey,
Do you mind
I do
moving the
appreciate
camera?
the I appreciate the opportunity to kind of address some of the other neighbors' issues. One, I just would like to say I've only met 2 of the individuals that had some comment about this project, and as it has, much of it has happened during COVID issues, which has had an effect on the progress of the project in terms of what the landscaper or anyone else working on that project could do and when they could get it done. That aside, I've made my own, I've reached out myself to some of the neighbors, and I've given them opportunity to let me know what their concerns are before anything got started. And if anything got started, that they could always come to me and let me know what the problem was, if there is a problem. Some of the things that was shared with me to me by Dennis about their concerns were never ever brought to my attention. The gentleman across the street has had the opportunity to call me, I think, and let me know whatever his concerns were. If it was, I think one time there was a gentleman that had a large truck that was blocking the street, and they couldn't get the garage or the garbage truck up there. I mean, they've had an opportunity to come to talk to me, and I've not had any conversation with them about the fence or the walls. No one has expressed any dissatisfaction to me about the project at all. I don't want to expand this beyond what we're talking about, because I don't think that this is the forum for it, but I extended Dennis to go out and talk to the folks when they actually made contact with him. But, One Taft Road Lane is at One Taft Road Lane. It receives mail. The individuals on either side of me have a phone number that they can contact me. The individual behind me and the gentleman that spoke in the White House up in the cul-de-sac area, they all can talk to me. I've not raised up any fences. If they had an issue with the fence being in the right of way, it took 4 or 5 months for this thing to get up. They could have said anything at all to me about it, and I would have stopped it, as we decided to do anyway. But no one's made any overtures to me about a problem with any of this project. Anything that was outside of the norm. I think this gentleman said that there's been a lot of contact. There's been no contact, none. No one said, outside of the inspector coming to the project and informing the landscaper of some of the things that he needed to either do or he could do. That's the only thing we've had any contact. There's not been any multiple letters. I've only received one letter, and it was handwritten, and they followed it up with the mail version of it. And he handed that to me, and it explained what our process and what we were supposed to do.
Mr. Walker,
Yes.
I know that there's sort of a lot of there's sort of our core issues here today about the proposed variances for the two fences, and then there's some sort of auxiliary matters as well.
Well, I understand. I don't want to get off topic.
Well, let me ask you this. Sometimes in cases like this where there's some disagreement with neighboring property owners and there's been a lack of communication,
Right.
I'll offer a 2-week continuance before I make a decision on this to allow you to engage in that dialogue with your neighbors that you claim is lacking, to maybe come up with some consensus agreement with your neighbors where there's some more buy-in from them before I make a decision on this. And that's totally up to you. I will. I'm happy to grant that continuance if it's something you're requesting. If you'd like me to just take the testimony here today and make a decision based off what that testimony I've heard is today, I can do that, and I'll leave that ball in your court. But if you would like some more dialogue with the neighbors, I'm happy to give you that 2 weeks to do
that. That would be fine. I have no problem with that, and I do apologize for allowing this to go into other areas other than what we requested. But again, if it's cathartic for some of these folks to, talk and they need a moderator, that's fine. But I'm approachable. They don't have to not want to come talk to me if they have an issue. I appreciate the opportunity to do so.
Okay. So I heard something about moderating that. I won't be moderating. This will be up to you all to individually connect and to have these conversations. And then
is it possible to be moderated by the building department in some way? I mean, the primary thing is that Herb doesn't return phone calls.
Mr. Davis, I'm sorry, I got to cut you off. So what I'm suggesting here today, it sounds like from both Mr. Walker and from neighbors that there has been a lack of communication. What I've offered is Mr. Walker an opportunity to engage in discussions with his neighbors and come back in 2 weeks after those discussions have happened, in the hopes that maybe there is some more consensus about how this project should go forward. If that does not occur, then we'll be in the same position we were 2 weeks ago, and I'll make the decision based on the testimony that I've heard. If there is consensus, that's always great. It's nice when that can happen, but unfortunately the city will not be in charge of moderating, setting up, or in any other way arbitrating those conversations, hoping that we all can accomplish that on our own. Okay, so Mr. Walker, do you believe 2 weeks is enough time to have these conversations? I can push it back further if need be, but again, the ball's in your court there on how you'd like to go forward.
It's more than enough time to me anyway. But
okay,
yes, that's fine.
Okay, great. So
Yes.
I'm sorry, David. Dennis had something to say also.
Who, with the neighbors, who would be I'm asking the neighbors this, I guess. Who would be the point person for the neighbors that I would?
So this is what I'll do. It sounds like each neighbor may want to participate in this, but I have an email that went out, an email invite for this Zoom that went out to each and every one of you. I assume, unless someone shared this invite with one of you. And so I will send out an email to everyone who was invited to the Zoom that will have in the subject, or not the subject line, but in the CC line or the address line, everyone else's emails. And so as long as that's okay with you all, you each will have each other's emails and you'll be able to reach out and communicate via email. Is that okay?
Yes,
Okay.
that's
Yes.
fine.
Okay. Again, I'll leave it up to each of you, and I'm gonna set this out for exactly 2 weeks. Let's see, that will be March 23rd. Now, if there are any changes to the application based on these discussions that Mr. Back or Mr. Walker that you plan to make, please share those with Doug Owen in the zoning department as soon as they are made. I'm just saying if they are made, sometimes that happens after these discussions, so that he can update his staff report. Otherwise, we'll come back on the 23rd and I'll get an update. I'll allow the neighbors and Mr. Walker again to provide any testimony or update about those discussions and about the project. Is there any other questions right now about any of that? Okay. All right, great. Well,
Thank you.
okay. I want to thank you all again for your time and your testimony here today. Good luck with those discussions. If you have questions, feel free to email me, but I won't be taking any testimony. Well, if you have any questions, please feel free to email me. And if I do receive any additional evidence or testimony or emails, I'll be sure to upload them to our project doc system and to also try to share them with everyone who was in this hearing here today. Okay, great. Thank you all very much. Hope you have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
We are adjourned.